So it is all about speed in today's sprint. Not very many laps and no chance to get ahead on strategy. Who here today has the raw skill to take them to the top? It's an unusual anti-clockwise race here at Interlagos, where the Sao Paulo locals are packed into the grandstands at each of the 15 corners around this classic 2.7-mile circuit. Two very fast sections bookend the famous and highly technical Sector 2, where getting a good run out of Yung Cao into one of the two DRS zones will be key to any overtaking prospects today. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Andrea Kimi Antonelli lines up on pole position, and starting next to them is George Russell. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Leclerc, Cali Meyer and Jackson, Gasly, Bortoletto, Hadjar and Lance Stroll, Sainz, Albon, Fernando Alonso and Behrman, Colapinto, Ocon, Pepe Marti and Nico Hülkenberg, Dewar, Maloney, Lawson and Paul Aaron completes the grid. And with preparations almost complete, let's head trackside for today's sprint. Welcome to the commentary box. I'm Alex Jakes, delighted to say that we're joined today by Anthony Davidson. So a sprint race today, and that means lights to flag, no stops. And how is that going to affect the driver behind the wheel?
Absolutely. So for today, there's no pit stop, or shouldn't be a pit stop anyway, if things go right, and you can forget about strategy. You're just driving today as fast as you can, make those overtakes if you need to, and that's what a sprint weekend's all about.
The formation lap gets underway ahead of today's sprint. It's going to be interesting to see who gets pole position. As all the cars take their positions on the grid, the final preparations have been made, and all that's left is for the drivers to deliver on track.
All right, here we are. Jackson pulling up to his grid slot here for the sprint race in Brazil. Handful of points on the table for these top 8 drivers. We have to see who else can get into those points positions. Throwing that race start transition in there yet again. I'm liking it so far. P6 for Jackson to start off. 5 red lights are off here in Brazil for the sprint race. Antonelli off to a decent start ahead of George Russell. He pushes through on the inside. Leclerc tries to push through Antonelli for P2 and does so, coming down the hill through turn 2 and 3 into the first DRS zone, coming down this. It's not really a back straight. It's the sector 1 to sector 2 straight here, as we see the invisible billboards getting destroyed like we did in season 1. So that's still an ongoing thing, almost just shy of it 9 months later, something like that, as we go through our grid. So we see Sainz back in P13, both Williams sitting P10 and 11. So we're kind of trying to gauge where everybody else is for the feature race. Russell holding on the lead of Leclerc by over 1.2 seconds at this point. Coming up the hill through turn 13 and 14. So we see him coming around that final corner. Turn 15 onto lap 2 of 12 for this sprint race. Antonelli pushing within the second of Leclerc. Jackson right there up in the gearbox, coming through turn 1, losing a little bit of ground. And I decided to do this a little bit early. We changed to manual ERS, so we are manually controlling our battery throughout this race and the feature race. So we're able to push away from Antonelli out of turn 5. Going through the grid yet again. The gaps are starting to form. Stroll P8, 1.6 is the gap. So we have that mini train there between Antonelli and Mayer. And then a lot of other gaps forming throughout the remainder of this grid as Russell is coming up the hill, I believe. Yeah, that's going to be turn 11, 12, 13 to finish out lap 12 as he's still sitting about 1.2 seconds back. Jackson 1.6 back behind Leclerc. So we move on board with Pierre Gasly and McLaren looking to put pressure on Bortoletto in the Ferrari, who's been doing good in this latter half of the season. That's going to be a retirement for Pierre Gasly coming into turn 4 out of the DRS zone for this sprint race. So no points for Gasly. Albon moving into that P8 slot. And we see a spin from Behrman out of turn 4 into turn 5. Not sure where that happened. I'm going to go ahead and he's actually sitting in place right at the barrier. Luckily, this didn't pull a safety car. And I'm kind of shocked it did because we're on lap 9 of 12, so it could have technically pulled a safety car in for at least one lap. We're going to go ahead and go back on board with Oliver Behrman, who is currently P11 at the time of Gasly's retirement. Coming through the braking zone of turn 4. Putting too much pressure down as he hit the curb. Minimal damage, just the front wing end plate. Losing the front wing end plate on that Red Bull to ruin his sprint race for the day. Back on board with Jackson, who's now 4.9 seconds behind Leclerc. Antonelli looking to put pressure. He snaps to the left, coming through turn 15. To start lap 10, he's going to hold on the inside. Jackson holds on the outside of turn 1. He's going to hold on to that position for now. See if Antonelli can put another ounce of pressure on Jackson before the end of this race. He's going to actually be doing it down the main, that straight into turn 4. We hold on to the outside line, and that's not going to be enough for Jackson to hold on. Antonelli's going to be pushing ahead for P3. And that's pretty much going to be it for this sprint race here in Brazil. George Russell coming around turn 12 and 13 to win the sprint race as he's pushing his lead against the other drivers of Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, and Aiden Jackson. Top 4 for this race coming into this race weekend. The sprint race not offering many points as we see the Ferrari of Leclerc in P2, and then I believe that's Antonelli in P3.
That is it for the sprint. Join us next time for qualifying and, of course, the main event, the Grand Prix. We will see you when Formula One returns.
All right, there's our result for the Brazil sprint race. Try to hold on to P3 as much as possible until Kimi came through about halfway through this race. We defended against Lando Norris, keeping him in 5th place for those 4 points that he got. So we jump into our standings real quick. Still a 15-point race, or a 15-point championship between the top 4. So officially, Callie Mayer has been dropped out unless she can score on the podium. Third. Yeah, she can score on the podium, and nobody else in the top 5 scores on the podium. She is still potentially in this. She's 49 points behind as we go into the feature race, but the main part of this championship is a 4-way battle. 2 Konnersports, 1 Ferrari, 1 Red Bull. 4 hands on that trophy, as Konnersport in the previous episode has claimed the constructors, as we're sitting 118 points ahead of Mercedes, but it is still a battle between Ferrari and Red Bull, as Aston Martin and McLaren are still sitting there, and Ford Racing Bulls down the order with no points on the team, so they're going to have a rough end of the season before they turn ownership over to, I believe it is, who is it? It is Ford Racing Bulls is going to be turned over to Maserati. So Maserati is going to have a tough start to the next season, but looking forward to see what they can do. If I got the team wrong, then I got the team wrong. But yeah, very interesting to see how things are going to turn out here in this next episode for the Sao Paulo Future Race. See you guys in a second.
Formula One returns to Interlagos once again with the stage set for what promises to be another classic Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel famously clinched his third championship here in 2012, and in 2016, Max Verstappen treated us all to one of the finest wet weather drives of all time. We're racing then at Interlagos, a historic 2.7-mile circuit and one of the few anti-clockwise tracks on the calendar. 15 corners in total, 9 to the left and 6 to the right, with a technical middle section opening up to a flat-out Sector 3 that gives us our best passing opportunity down into Turn 1. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. Lando Norris put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he will start from pole position, just ahead of George Russell, who starts this event from P2. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Mayer, Leclerc, Pierre Gasly and Antonelli, Behrman, Albon, Jackson and Isaac Hadjar, Sainz, Alonso, Lance Stroll and Ocon, Aaron, Colapinto, Zay Maloney, Gabriel Bortoletto, Doohan, Lawson, Hulkenberg and Pepe Marti completes the grid. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today? And we welcome you to the commentary box overlooking the circuit. I'm Alex Jakes and I'm joined by Anthony Davidson. I love this moment in the weekend. Put us in their shoes right now. What are they feeling on the grid?
You've got to know, you've got to have a pre-race game plan. You've watched videos before you get into the car of previous races gone by. You know where you have to place your car if X, Y or Z happens in front of you or behind you. So having this clear game plan is absolutely essential before you get in the car.
The formation lap gets underway here in Brazil. Some memorable moments in history have come from this very circuit. Will we be treated to another today? Well, let's find out. As the cars make their way back to the starting grid to form up and get ready for lights out, let's hope the race ahead today is a thrilling one. It will go down as a memorable Grand Prix in the history books.
All right, here we are pulling up to our grid slot after that grid penalty for a component change, so it's not our true position. Pulling up behind the Red Bull Ford of, I believe that is Lando Norris. I could be wrong. From the top of my... From the start of this recording, that's going to be Oliver Behrman we're starting behind. P9 for Jackson, 5 red lights are on. And we're off for the feature race here in Brazil, coming up the hill into turn 1. Russell on the inside holding off Lando Norris this time around. We saw Antonelli in the sprint race the last time fighting Russell. Coming through that first straight DRS zone as we have a little bit of a choppy transition there from the game. I don't know what's going on. And we see the invisible billboard getting demolished yet again. Coming out of turn 4, or out of turn 4 into turn 5. Alpine not looking as much, not really looking better than they did in the sprint. Same with Audi. And so we see Russell already about a half second ahead of Lando Norris. And we're looking to see if Charles Leclerc can stay within the fight. He's in P4, Callie Mayer P3, looking to close in her gap of points. She's currently sitting P5 in the championship at 141 points. So we see Jackson trying to make a move on Pierre Gasly. The McLaren's looking like they're doing better later in this season as we try to see a move on the outside of turn 1 on Oliver Behrman from Jackson, but no point in trying that. As you guys can tell by the steering wheel, we are using battery. I did mention it in the sprint race. We are manually controlling our battery this time around. I just had enough of the straight line speed. So hopefully that will help us in this race, the final race in Abu Dhabi and next season, as we are looking forward to seeing several teams joining this grid to replace Alpine, Williams, McLaren partnership with Monster, and I believe, yeah, Racing Bull, Ford Racing Bull is going to be replaced by Maserati, I believe it is. I always forget which teams are replacing what teams when putting new mods in, but we're going through the grid here. Lap 2. Norris still within 0.3 of a second of Russell, so he's staying within that fight. Callie Mayer about a half second, 0.6 or so. So we see another outside move into turn 1 from Jackson on Oliver Behrman. This time it's going to stick around with DRS. Leclerc up in P4. Just over a second, well, just under a second, as that fight is going to continue until lap 4, where Jackson makes the move into turn 1 yet again, this time on Leclerc for P4. Behrman still sitting back in P6 as the gap is forming between Jackson and Mayer. The mini train going on there as we go down the main straight. Leclerc is looking to make a move on the inside of turn 4, not quite there. As Jackson holds on, Russell is still about 0.7 ahead of Norris. So Norris is just playing it safe and staying with Russell. Lap 5 now, Leclerc looking to make a move on Jackson, this time on the inside of turn 1. Is he going to be able to hold on to it? No, we're going to be able to hold on to the outside lane of turn 1 into turn 2. Using a very good, well, pretty much strategizing where we want to use our battery. We're using it on the main straight, we're using it sector 1 straight, and then saving it through sector 2 pretty much. Leclerc trying to push against Jackson now on lap 13. You guys can see the weather coming in as he's coming down the hill of turns 1 and 2 into the DRS straight. Can Leclerc make a move here into turn 4 down this DRS? No, he cannot. He's going to be ducking off to the side. That is going to be an engine failure for Charles Leclerc. Lap 13 of 36 here in Brazil. That is going to be his championship hopes pretty much down to chance when it comes to the final race of the year. Moving on to Callie Mayer, lap 14. She is now ahead of Norris by 3/4, coming through sector 2. And she's looking to fight for points for her championship standing as she's going up in smoke through turn 10 into turn 11. So Callie Mayer and Leclerc have now practically dropped out of this championship battle. Callie Mayer sitting at 141 points. That is going to drop her out of contention. She will not be able to win this championship after the finish. Leclerc still has an opportunity in the final race if Russell and Norris crash. And that's just a possibility. That's not saying that it will happen. I don't think it will happen. But the battle right now is between Russell and Norris. Jackson currently sitting P3 on lap 15. The weather is coming in. The rain is starting to come in. We're on board with Hulkenberg on lap 17 coming in for his pit stop as we get to our F1 commentators.
We're just under half of the race distance here at the penultimate round of the season, and the entire complexion of this race is about to change. Yesterday's sprint already scrambled the order, and today has only doubled down on the unpredictability. The radar shows rain sweeping in within the next few laps, but despite that, we're seeing the first brave or desperate calls for slick tyres, which is a massive gamble. Drivers rolling the dice now are banking on two things: that the rain arrives later than forecast, or that they can generate enough temperature to survive the incoming drizzle before everyone else is forced to react. If they nail it, they could leapfrog half the field. If they don't, they'll be skating around on glass. And all of this is happening while the championship contenders are trying to keep their heads. Russell and Norris can't afford to blink here. One wrong tyre call, one mistimed stop, and the entire title fight swings.
Leclerc dropping out isn't just a setback, it's a potential knockout blow to his title hopes. With Russell and Norris running up front, both having the opportunity to score big, the math starts to tilt sharply. even a modest points haul today would have kept Leclerc in the conversation heading to Abu Dhabi, but a DNF at this stage of the season is brutal. That leaves the finale shaping up as a straight duel. Russell versus Norris, with Jackson lurking just behind, depending on how this race unfolds. Every lap they stay out now is a lap where the championship pendulum can swing.
With roughly 10 seconds between their two cars, Konnersport are sitting in that rare window where a double stack is possible without instantly destroying one driver's race. But in conditions like this, possible and wise are two very different things. On the other side of things, it looks like Norris is electing for a compound change to intermediates. So we're more than likely going to see him stay out and probably build a lead against Russell.
By the looks of things and how teams are communicating, it doesn't seem like many teams are opting for that pit stop to intermediates. And we see Konnersport change out Jackson's tires for another set of slicks. So there must still be some run time before full tread tires are needed.
Jackson is in a decent position currently, but that puts him at a disadvantage when the rain does come, especially if he doesn't get any worth out of those tyres he just put on. Because coming in for that second set of slick tyres puts him down the order and at the possibility of being pushed out of the top 10, which doesn't help his teammate against the two Red Bulls.
Aside from the championship fight between Russell and Norris, there's also the constructors' battle for second place, being Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes, which seems to be coming down to that final race in Abu Dhabi as well. I believe you had Christian Horner on the line?
That is right. We have Christian Horner on the call from the Red Bull pit box. How's the team feeling today, Christian?
Yeah, the team is focused. Yeah, we've known this weather was creeping toward us since yesterday for the sprint race, so the guys are ready for it. The big thing now is timing. If that heavy rain hits in the next few laps, you could see half the field caught out on the wrong tyre. Our crew's already in position. Both drivers are being kept updated, and we'll make the call the moment the crossover window opens. It's one of those days where adaptability wins races.
Adapting is right, because we just saw Lando Norris pass George Russell in the pits from a mistake by the Konnersport pit crew. What's the team's plan for the remainder of the race?
The plan is simple. The team feels confident that Lando can manage the car till the end of the race, knowing how the weather changes here, hoping that he can keep the car out front by the time he crosses that finish line.
We know Lando has had quite the season, and this kind of reminds me of how Verstappen used to drive with the team. Has the shoes that Lando put himself in been able to make up for Verstappen leaving the team this year?
Lando is a completely different driver than Max, and yes, the team has been able to adjust to and be able to work the car around Lando in order to get him into the position he is in today. But the team's main focus is on the current season drivers. We don't need any of the comparisons within the team of past drivers. It takes away from the team's focus when it comes to drivers and constructors championships.
Is there any word on Lando staying with the team for next season? I know there isn't much of a regulation change this season, but will he keep building his relationship with the team?
As stated by myself and other teams throughout the season, F1 is an ever-changing sport, and there's no telling whether a driver wants to stay or go from season to season. So I have no answer for you on that.
Well, I did want to thank you for your time, Christian, and can't wait to hear what you and other team principals have to say in the team principals press conference before the finale in Abu Dhabi. I also wanted to go down the pit lane to the Ferrari pit box. Fred, you had Charles Leclerc retire earlier in the race. I'm sure there's still some fight left in him come the final race of the season.
Yes, if we're looking at the standings currently with where Norris and Russell are, then Leclerc does have a chance at claiming the championship, but it would be more beneficial if those drivers didn't finish on the podium.
Leclerc didn't look too happy when getting out of the car, and that puts so much more pressure on him for that last race of the season. Has the team started working on what needs to change in the off-season for next year?
Yes, the team has already set in motion new training programs throughout the different departments, and I do believe we will be ready for next season, and we'll be back fighting at the front of the grid where the team performs best, and I do hope that those transitions that take place in the off-season we'll keep our drivers on track for putting their much appreciated time and effort into the car and out on track next season.
One last thing. Fred, the team is looking at a constructors' battle against Mercedes and Red Bull for the final race of the season. Do you feel like the team will still be able to keep up with the top teams regardless of the team's result after Abu Dhabi?
I feel confident in the team. There hasn't been a year where we haven't had one of our cars within the top 10 as of recently, and we expect to stay within the top 5 teams come next season.
All right then, Fred, we wanted to thank you for your input on this very challenging weekend for your team, and can't wait to see what happens for the team at the final race of the season.
I'm really looking forward to what next season has to offer for Ferrari, especially after the regulation changes go into effect. We've seen some later progress from Alpine throughout the midseason, and that could pave the way for Lotus returning. And the same goes for some of the other backmarker teams with what work they can give to the oncoming teams next season, knowing how much of a challenge it will be for them coming in with this type of car that is currently out on track. It's kind of sets up a reset, so to speak. All teams are somewhat on a level playing field, but it is still the 2022 regulation car.
You really need to stop talking about next season. But it's so hard not to, because it's getting me so excited, and we still have one more race weekend to go before we could really dive into the action of next season. We did see Aiden Jackson finally come in for a set of intermediate tyres, and somehow he's still sitting within the points as the rain has somewhat settled at moderate levels, and I'm sure within these next few laps the rain will pass over, forcing teams to choose whether or not to stay on those inters like Red Bull plans to do with Lando Norris. Let's get back to the action.
And a lot of action has happened during that commentary. A lot of laps. Jackson sitting P8 on intermediate tires, and I honestly feel like we could have stretched those medium tires to the rain. We could have gone for a one-stop that, not George Russell, that Lando Norris is going for. So we see Jackson passing a back marker. I'm not quite sure who that was. There's a spin from Hadjar into turn 1 coming down the hill. We barely avoid it. Yellow flag, not enough for a safety car with this weather. So we're going to be holding on to P7. Hadjar getting out of this spin. He's still staying ahead of his teammate of Alexander Albon in P9. We're trying to manage these intermediate tires as much as possible as we're coming through lap 30 into our pit stop, or into our second pit stop of the race. You guys can see how dark it is out on track, but it's starting to dry out. So we're going to be coming in onto a new set of stop tires, hoping to get some ground on some of the other drivers that are around us. And I believe that was the Audi. I could be wrong. But Albon staying out on track this lap as we're on board with Hadjar coming in behind us from that spin. Alonso staying out on... No, Alonso's going to be coming in. It's going to be a lot of people coming in as we see Jack Doohan, who's just behind Lando Norris, who has him lapped. Going through the rest of this grid, we see the Gulf Williams ahead of Paul Aaron, I believe that is. I could be wrong. There's a lot of stuff going on here as people are getting lapped or have been lapped with their pit stops. Lando Norris currently sitting in P1, 5.3 seconds ahead of George Russell, who is now coming in for slick tires, having an issue there in the front left as the Audi, no, that's going to be the Haas, I believe, coming out ahead of him. So he has some back markers ahead of him. Gasly coming in, Behrman coming in behind Russell by 15 seconds. So the times that we see on the interval is pretty accurate. Jackson sitting P8, looking to see where he can end up after these sets of pit stops. Sainz coming in. That's Albon in the back. I believe, no, Albon is coming in now. He's going to be coming in behind one of the back markers. Jackson coming through turn 1. He's going to be coming out behind a lot of, well, he's going to be behind a lot of backmarker traffic, actually, as there's not really much else that's going to be happening throughout this race here in Brazil. But that is Lando Norris finishing this race in the dry weather on intermediate tires putting him 7 points between him and George Russell for the race in Abu Dhabi. It's going to be a head-to-head. They said it in the commentary. I said it here again as we see George Russell crossing the line at P2. And that's going to be the McLaren of, I believe, Pierre Gasly to finish this podium here in Brazil for this feature race.
What a way to head to victory. Lando Norris takes the win.
A great display of dominance today by this driver. They led from lights out to the flag at the end, led every lap of the race. Brilliant stuff by them, and excited to see what more they can do in future races.
Well, another edition of the podcast is complete. We wander from the cool-down room to celebrate things on the podium. And Lando Norris celebrates the win in style. Well, what an end to another fantastic weekend of racing. Thanks to everyone who's joined us, and we'll see you for the next one.
All right, there we are, the results for the Sao Paulo feature race. I was going to say sprint race again. George Russell finishing in second. Lando Norris, I believe he finished on intermediate tires. He was so far ahead. He finished on intermediate tires. He was a whole 12 seconds ahead of George Russell. Pierre Gasly, McLaren's pushing out really well. Oliver Behrman and the other Red Bull pushed out some performance in today's feature race. Top 10 were the only drivers who were not on the lead lap, or who were not lapped. Everybody else on the grid was lapped. Callie Mayer and Charles Leclerc retired earlier in the race. So we go to our standings for the final race weekend. Seems like Charles Leclerc and Aiden Jackson are battling for third place, while the top of the championship goes between George Russell and Lando Norris. We already know Konnersport has won the constructors, so it's going to be the final battle. 2 Brits and a hopeful Charles Leclerc or Aiden Jackson for this season 2 finale coming up next. I don't know. I'm going to be driving as George Russell for the finale. He's ahead by 7 points, so the difference is 7 points between him and Lando Norris. And yeah, so hopefully Aiden Jackson can do some work, and then Callie Mayer and Kimi Antonelli can get in the way of Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris, hopefully. But we'll have to wait and see what happens in that finale as we wrap it up here in Sao Paulo. I hope you guys enjoyed, because I know I did, and we'll see you guys in the next one.